10 Sony Spider-Man universe characters who deserve to be rebooted in the MCU after the franchise's ending. Marvel Studios may have the opportunity to reinvent many characters from Sony's Spider-Man universe in the MCU as Sony's divisive Marvel franchise is officially coming to an end. 2024's Kraven the Hunter will be the final movie in the primary timeline of Sony's Spider-Man universe, as Sony will now be focusing more on the MCU's Spider-Man 4, Spider-Man, Beyond the Spider-Verse and the Spider-Noir series. Many will be glad to see the conclusion of the SSU, which delivered disappointment after disappointment. But the franchise's most promising characters are also in jeopardy. While Sony's Spider-Man universe never actually introduced its own iteration of Marvel's iconic wall crawler, the franchise did explore the stories of some of Peter Parker's greatest villains from Marvel Comics. Unfortunately, lackluster scripts, uninspiring narratives, and some wooden performances meant that not all these notable characters were done justice in the SSU. With the franchise finally coming to an end after Kraven the Hunter, it's possible Marvel Studios could take these characters and make them far stronger alongside Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the MCU's main continuity. Released in February 2024, Madame Web was a major disappointment for Sony and marked a sorry debut for Dakota Johnson as Cassandra Webb, a paramedic whose clairvoyant abilities lead her into battle against the egotistical Ezekiel Sims. Madame Web made an attempt to deliver an origin story for Marvel Comics' Madame Web, who is depicted as an elderly woman who aids Spider-Man on several occasions. However, the movie fell completely flat, packed full of embarrassing lines, poor visual effects, and a predictable plot that went nowhere and explained nothing. Madame Web is an incredibly powerful character in Marvel Comics, but this did not translate into Dakota Johnson's portrayal. It would be great to see a more comic-accurate version of Madame Web introduced into the MCU, especially since Marvel Studios could give the character her mutant backstory, which Sony could not. The MCU's Madame Web could become a fantastic and much-needed mentor to Tom Holland's Spider-Man now that he's alone in the world, offering her real redemption after Madame Web failed to bring her to life properly. Madame Web not only debuted Cassandra Webb in live action, but also brought 3 formidable Spider-Women from Marvel Comics to life, and failed these exciting female heroes in much the same way. While Madame Web failed to capture the essences of Maddie Franklin and Anya Corazon, it was Julia Carpenter, renamed Julia Cornwall for the movie, who was let down the most. Sydney Sweeney was brilliant casting for this role, but Madame Web's Julia Cornwall had none of the confidence, charisma, fierceness, and strength of Marvel Comics' Julia Carpenter. Julia Carpenter was the second character in Marvel Comics to adopt the Spider-Woman moniker, following Jessica Drew, and she became one of the most popular and notable carriers of the title. She became a member of the Avengers and Omega Flight, and eventually became the new Madame Web, and this whole story could be explored with a proper depiction of Julia Carpenter in the MCU. There are hopes that Sydney Sweeney will be cast in an MCU role, and it would be great to see her play an honest-to-goodness Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman. Despite comprising mostly disappointing installments, Sony's Spider-Man universe did attract some hugely talented actors, including Woody Harrelson. Harrelson debuted as Cletus Cassidy in Venom's post-credits scene, and had a larger role as the host of the symbiote known as Carnage in 2021's Venom. Let There Be Carnage. The Venom trilogy was the SOU's most successful and popular franchise, but even these movies had noticeable flaws, so it would be great to see Carnage reinvented for the MCU. Venom. Let There Be Carnage is Sony's Spider-Man universe's highest-rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes, with a critic's score of 58% and an audience score of 84%. This would give psychopathic serial killer Cletus Cassidy the chance to explore some of his darkest Marvel Comics storylines that were ignored in Venom, Let There Be Carnage. This could include his evolution into Dark Carnage and his connection to Null, the creator of the symbiotes, which could make him Spider-Man's most terrifying and powerful villain yet. It would, of course, be great to see Woody Harrelson back as Cassidy and Carnage, though a more stoic and sinister actor could also assume this haunting role in the MCU's future. The Foreigner is one of Marvel's most mysterious and intriguing Spider-Man villains, as he has no superhuman abilities in Marvel Comics, but has spent years training so his body is in peak physical condition, which makes him a formidable threat to the Wallcrawler. With connections to many other powerful Spider-Man villains, The Foreigner was almost an exciting addition to 2024's Kraven the Hunter's cast. However, Christopher Abbott did not deliver the magnetism and mysteriousness of Marvel Comics' Foreigner. In the comics, The Foreigner is depicted as one of the most competent and skilled assassins on Earth. In Kraven the Hunter, however, Abbott's minor villain was hastily killed off by Calypso after making very little impact. This was a monumental disappointment, and he was just one of several iconic villains who didn't survive the events of Kraven the Hunter, each of whom could do with being reinvented for the MCU. The Foreigner could be one of Spider-Man's longest-running and most scheming enemies in the MCU, so there are hopes he'll return in full force. On paper, adapting Morbius, the living vampire, from Marvel Comics should have worked perfectly, but Jared Leto's dull performance of the vibrant and dark supernatural anti-hero from the comics completely flopped. 2022's Morbius, similarly to Madame Web, both had the same writers, was packed full of awkward moments and a nonsensical narrative, which meant that Michael Morbius himself did not achieve his full potential. Morbius is one of Marvel's most beloved monstrous characters, so it was a shame that his live-action debut failed so spectacularly. Morbius, the living vampire, made his Marvel Comics debut as a sympathetic adversary of Spider-Man in 1971's The Amazing Spider-Man number 101. He was later depicted as an anti-hero and vigilant in his own right. Marvel Studios has recently been giving more attention to the MCU's more supernatural characters, including Werewolf by Night, Man-Thing, Dane Whitman, Agatha Harkness, and soon Blade. This has spurred theories that the MCU is setting up a live-action Midnight Suns team, of which Morbius is a key member in Marvel Comics. It would be great to see the living vampire reinvented for the MCU, removing him completely from Jared Leto's depiction, and setting him up to be a powerful asset to the Midnight Suns. Despite being the final movie in Sony's Spider-Man universe, Kraven the Hunter seemed to tease Dmitry Kravanov's Chameleon as a more prominent villain in future movies. Fred Hetchinger's character, Kraven the Hunter's own brother, didn't demonstrate his shape-changing abilities until the end of the 2024 movie, after having been enhanced by the doctor who experimented on Alexei Sitsevich, the Jackal. Unfortunately, it seems audiences may not see the next chapter in the story of this chameleon, but Marvel Studios could develop this iconic villain further. The Chameleon was Spider-Man's first ever adversary in Marvel Comics, debuting in The Amazing Spider-Man number 1 in 1963, so it would be brilliant to see him adapted properly into the MCU. 2019's Spider-Man Far From Home saw Newman Akar portray a member of Nick Fury's team named Dimitri, spurring theories he could become the MCU's Chameleon, but this hasn't yet occurred. This could be a possible storyline Marvel follows in Tom Holland's upcoming Spider-Man trilogy, reinventing the Chameleon after his lackluster Kraven the Hunter debut. Uncle Ben has often been depicted as one of the most important characters in Peter Parker's evolution into Spider-Man, so it was brilliant to see Adam Scott bring Ben Parker to life in Madame Web. He was one of the most welcome and pleasing aspects of the 2024 movie, and showed just how great it would be to see Uncle Ben in the MCU, as Marvel Studios introduced Tom Holland's Spider-Man after Ben had already passed away. It would be great to see Peter Parker's origin story explored in the MCU, finally debuting Uncle Ben. In Madame Web, Ben Parker was depicted as Cassandra Webb's best friend and paramedic partner, and the brother-in-law to Emma Roberts' Mary Parker, Peter Parker's mother. Adam Scott brought levity, lightheartedness, and a fatherly tone to the role, which would be incredible to see replicated in the MCU, perhaps with Scott reprising the role. This could see him appear in flashbacks alongside Marisa Tomei, who portrayed Aunt May between Captain America, Civil War, and Spider-Man: No Way Home, allowing the MCU to develop the relationship between Spider-Man and his family even further. While there are several characters from Kraven the Hunter that could do with being reimagined in the MCU, none are perhaps more prominent than Kraven the Hunter himself, Aaron Taylor Johnson's Sergei Kravinoff. Taylor Johnson did as good a job as he could in the 2024 movie, expertly delivering action sequences and bringing fun and intensity to the role. But he was let down by a poor script and lackluster storyline, which became a running theme in the SSU. Kraven the Hunter also would have benefited from including Spider-Man, Kraven's greatest enemy in Marvel Comics. Aaron Taylor Johnson previously debuted in the MCU as Pietro Maximoff's Quicksilver in 2015's Avengers: Age of Ultron. Despite being a huge Marvel Comics hero, Quicksilver was killed off in Age of Ultron, though there has been speculation that he'll return in Phase 6. Moving Kraven the Hunter into the MCU after his flawed debut in the SSU would give him the chance to face off against Spider-Man, which many would love to see. Kraven has almost appeared in the MCU a number of times, most notably in Ryan Coogler's Black Panther franchise, but Sony has always blocked this inclusion. Perhaps now the SSU is over, Sony will now allow Kraven the Hunter to be integrated into the MCU, though it's unclear whether Aaron Taylor Johnson will reprise the role considering his former MCU role of Quicksilver. Null, the creator of the symbiotes, is one of Marvel Comics' newest and most formidable villains, introduced in 2018's Venom, Vol. 4, Number 3. Null, a primordial cosmic being, was dubbed the King in Black by early Celestials, tasked with maintaining the universe, but he renounced this role and wanted to use his new symbiotes to spread darkness instead. Eventually, however, his symbiotes turned on him and imprisoned him, which was adapted into 2024's Venom: The Last Dance, which saw former Venom movie director Andy Serkis portray the supervillain. Venom: The Last Dance routinely teased Null escaping from his prison by using the Codex inside Eddie Brock and Venom. But Venom's sacrifice made this impossible. Weirdly, Null still teased his escape, even though there's now no Codex. Confusing storyline aside, Null is a powerful multiversal villain in Marvel Comics, so it would make a lot of sense for him to make the move into the MCU proper, especially since there's still a piece of the Venom symbiote residing in the MCU. Null could be the MCU's next Thanos-level villain, which is very exciting. Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock was the only SSU character who received an entire trilogy comprising half the Marvel movie franchise. Journalist Brock became the host of the Venom symbiote in 2018's Venom, and subsequently battled the likes of Riot, Carnage, Shriek, and an army of Xenophages before Venom seemingly sacrificed his life and left Brock alone. Unfortunately, even though Venom was Sony's most popular Marvel character, the SFU still did very little with the popular Marvel Comics villain turned anti-hero, but Marvel Studios can do better. Doctor Strange's spell in Spider-Man: No Way Home also pulled Eddie Brock and Venom into the MCU. After hanging out in a Mexican bar, Brock and Venom were sent home, but not before leaving a piece of the symbiote in the MCU, creating the perfect opportunity for Venom to be integrated fully into the MCU, despite his demise in Venom: The Last Dance. This could lead to Spider-Man receiving his much-wanted black costume, and introduce Venom to many of his other related characters from Marvel Comics, giving him more attention than he ever got in Sony's Spider-Man universe.